Alright, I think you're really going to enjoy Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's got adventure, it's got chivalry, it's got knights, it's got supernatural things going on, and it's a great picture, by the way. It's not just a cool adventure story. It actually tells us a little bit about the history of England. So let's talk about it a little bit. Here's just a reminder of what chivalry is. So we're talking about King Arthur. We're talking about King Arthur's court, the Round Table. Sir Gawain is the nephew of King Arthur. And so we are talking about this time of knights and chivalry and the rest, in which you respect God first, you respect your king, and you respect women, and you protect the poor and the weak. And so living by a code of ethics, a chivalric code, is what every knight aspires to do. And Sir Gawain happens to be one of those who does it better than the other knights, which of course we would expect if he's going to be the hero of our story. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight could also be considered epic poetry, because Sir Gawain is that impetuous, youthful Beowulf, Roland. He's the one who is going to move the story along. He is our epic hero as a model of faith and loyalty and bravery. He's going to undertake a long, difficult journey between Camelot and the Green Chapel. He is going to fight on behalf of another. He steps in because King Arthur is about to accept the challenge himself, and Sir Gawain wants to step in, and he will do that as a way of honoring and respecting his king. And he is going to fight an enemy who may or may not have supernatural powers. We'll look at that in a minute. Certainly, you know when his head comes off and he's still alive that we're not in Kansas anymore, right? So we have this hero, we have this quest, this adventurous expedition, in which you're looking to find something spiritually fulfilling or self-enhancing. Now, what in the world is that going to do at the end of this story? Sir Gawain is going to come to a new realization about his gifts, his abilities, his virtue, and his fallibility. We'll look at that in just a minute. So, King Arthur is one of the main characters that starts out. He's the legendary king of Britain, and he reminds me a lot of when we talked about Charlemagne. We said that the Song of Roland was written some 300 years after the events that Charlemagne, the person, was actually involved in. So by the time the Song of Roland comes out, Charlemagne is 200 years old, big, long beard filled with wisdom. He's become an idealized king. Well, King Arthur is also that kind of idealized king. And so historians have looked to find, are there historic elements going back to even Roman times, out of which we might find some historical basis for this legendary king of Great Britain. King Arthur is the uncle of Gawain. He himself is bold and chivalrous and courageous, and has created this Knights of the Round Table. And when we meet him in Sir Gawain, it is the Christmas season. His knights are together, and they are celebrating the joy of that time. You can join right into their fellowship. Sir Gawain, on the other hand, is Arthur's nephew. He follows that same chivalric code. He carries a shield with a pentacle on it, which is a 5-pointed star. And the 5-pointed star is on a red background with gold trim. And the red signifies the blood of Christ, and the gold signifies his desire for perfection, which is going to be one of the themes of our story. His one flaw, as we see, the lack of perfection that comes, is when he loves his life so much that he lies to protect it. That's the flaw, that's the sin, that's the breaking of the chivalric code, as you see, number 5 on that list above. That's the problem that he runs into. All right, so we have Sir Gawain, one of the heroes of the Round Table, one of the men who is a tribute, who is an honor, who is a source of pride for King Arthur because of his character, because of his life and his stance. And so Sir Gawain is the hero of King Arthur's realm. There is another realm in the story occupied by the Green Knight. The Green Knight is an interesting character. He symbolizes the worship of nature in pre-Christian Britain. So this battle is going to come, this Christianized knight is going to come and do battle with one representative of what pre-Christianized Britain would have believed. Their nature religion, their paganism. The Green Knight represents that kind of thing. So who will win out in this battle for the heart and soul of Britain? Will it be King Arthur and his knights and the Christian religion that has found its way into Britain? Or will it be the nature religion, the paganism of a pre-Christian time? So this is not technically a battle between good and evil. I guess we could slice it that way theologically, but it's a battle for Christianity coming into a place and winning out over the paganism of the place as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There are three components to our story. There is first the beheading game that takes place in Camelot. Then there is the temptation by the lady a year later as Sir Gawain makes this journey, this quest to the Green Chapel. And there he is tried in a different way by the lady. And then we have, at the end of the story, the exchange of winnings and how this test has come out. There are two settings that picture for us those two influences that I talked about. Camelot talks about the warmth of fellowship at Christmas time. There is a Christian influence there. There is fellowship together. There is community. And there is a kind of loneliness that comes to us from the Green Knight, from the Green Chapel where he lives. It seems cold. It seems lifeless. It seems lonely in the poem. And so this represents that pre-Christian paganism that was in Europe, or was in England at the time. If you have studied with me in the great books in the modern world, we talked a little bit about the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. And in the last one, C.S. Lewis gives a lot of space to Merlin. And C.S. Lewis argues that Merlin has power because he is one who is trying to follow the truth, but Christianity has not yet come to Great Britain. So I think that's kind of the mindset that we're going to have in this book. The Green Knight is not in complete opposition, but he's testing out the virtue of King Arthur's knights and testing them to see what they are truly made of. And so this is the way the story sort of unfolds. The two settings, Camelot and the Green Chapel. There is also the Green Knight's wife, and in Arthurian legends, there is a woman called Morgan Le Fay, who is an enchantress. And while this is not Morgan Le Fay in this book, the Gawain poet seems to be drawing from a lot of that. This wife is so attractive as an enchantress that it turns out the author has to come along and say, and she has some other motive besides. And so he's got to remind himself that the story has to do not with the temptation itself, but the testing of the virtue of Gawain. Do you see what I mean? So he gets carried away with the beauty and the attractiveness of the Enchantress, and so he has to bring the reader back and say she was doing this and she had some other motive besides. Do you see what I'm saying? All right, so that's the Enchantress in the Green Knight. Now, every time that there is a temptation of Sir Gawain, the Green Knight steps away. He goes off hunting. And there's an interesting parallel between the 3 trips to go hunting and the 3 temptations of Sir Gawain. The first time the Green Knight goes hunting, there is a terror-stricken deer who's fleeing from horn and hound. Then there's the second time he goes hunting, there is a baneful boar of unbelievable size. And then the third hunt is for a wily fox. So those are our 3 animals in the 3 hunts. And how does that compare to what Sir Gawain is happening? So the terror-stricken deer in that first temptation that he has with the Green Knight's wife was a sudden, unexpected temptation. You can see that Sir Gawain appears to be a deer in the headlights, that sort of thing, right? So it's a sudden, unexpected temptation. And then the second temptation that comes along, there is a battle with the baneful boar of unbelievable size that the Green Knight is setting about to hunt. For Gawain, there is this desperation to remain courteous, as the chivalric code would have him be, and also to remain pure in the face of the temptation. So he can't, in his mind, run off like Joseph does to be discourteous in order to remain pure. So he's having this awful internal struggle between remaining chaste and being courteous to this Green Knight's wife. You see it? And then the third one, you know the story, or you will soon. There is one last temptation that is wily fox in nature, in which there is he does not bend to the temptation, but the Green Knight's wife does give him a talisman that will save his life. And when asked about having it, he lies, and he lies because he wants to save his life. So the sin, the breaking of the chivalric code, was not in having the talisman, but in lying that you have it. Right? So this is the wily fox temptation number 3. Technically he passes, but there is still that one issue that needs to be addressed. All right. Then the result is that there is glory for the House of Arthur. There is glory for Great Britain then, because the glory of Great Britain is the house of King Arthur. And of course, as a Christian knight, his courage, his good faith, his courtesy, his chastity are all celebrated at the end. But you notice for Gawain there is both celebration and lament. Remember his shield, the gold is reaching for perfection. And did he reach perfection? No, there was this still failing in his own character, that when push comes to shove with regard to saving his life, he will lie to do it. So that's what we have here as the tarnishing sin. So the book ends ambiguously about the results. Gawain is celebrated and given great reward, but there is also this lament in Gawain's own mind and heart because he fell short of what his duty was. So there you are. Do you like the story? It's a crazy ride, and I invite you to join me in it and watch for these things as you read through the book. You're going to enjoy both the story and the poetry that's involved. Thanks for joining me.